Welcome to the Huracan Performante. This is not only Lamborghini's fastest road car ever around a race course, but the company claims that it's the quickest production car in the world around the mighty Nürburgring. Today, we're going to put it through its paces around another of the world's greatest racetracks.
It's the Autodromo Enzo e Dino Ferrari, better known as Imola, the town that this classic circuit winds right through. The track has changed a bit over the years, having a few more chicanes than it used to, but this is still an epically fast circuit. But before we head out on the track, let's see what changes Lambo has made to its latest and greatest revision of the Huracan.
Now, sometimes when we're talking about special editions from certain supercar manufacturers, they're really just slapping on some extra decals, giving the engine a token increase in power, and then jacking up the price by 20%. But that's not what's happening here. The Huracan Performante is properly special, although it does have some extra decals and the engine does have about 30 more horsepower, but really, that's just the beginning of what makes this car very different to drive.
It has a new nose, rear diffuser, and side skirts, all made of carbon fiber, those plus a number of other tweaks that make this car 88 pounds lighter than the base coupe. The new exhaust exits higher in the rear, poking out the center of the car. The suspension is stiffer, and the active dampers and variable steering have all been reprogrammed to take advantage of the extra grip. But to see the biggest change, you have to look at that gigantic new rear wing.
To see what sets this car apart, you have to not only look at the rear wing, but underneath the rear wing. You see those slots? That's the active aerodynamic system here in the Performante. And while there are plenty of supercars with giant rear wings that flop around at speed, the Performante not only ducts air over the rear wing, but actually through the rear wing. That means it can decrease the drag on the straight so you don't pay the penalty of having a giant slab of carbon fiber hanging out behind you at 200 miles an hour, which, by the way, this car can very easily do.
Flaps in the nose do the same trick to control airflow around the front diffuser, and if that weren't fancy enough, there are separate ducts on the left and the right of the car. In other words, the Huracan Performante can not only increase grip in the corners and decrease drag in the straights, but it can generate more grip on the left or the right to help the car turn. So this then is a Lamborghini focused on going fast around the track. That's interesting because while Lamborghinis have always looked great and sounded amazing and been bristling with power and aggression, basically checking all the supercar boxes, they haven't necessarily been the most track-focused of machines. In other words, if you were looking for something to dominate the racetrack, something that can do lap after lap after lap at the limit, you might have been inclined to spend your $300,000 or so elsewhere. That changes here.
Absolutely incredible! The steering on the Performante is incredibly sharp. It ducks right in the corners. And while I confess I don't know if I can feel the aerodynamics working, this is a very high-speed circuit, and I definitely appreciate all the extra grip that I can get out here. This is an all-wheel drive car, so you might expect it would understeer a little bit, but that is not the case. It turns in very, very sharply into the many chicanes here at Imola these days. And when you put your foot down, it just screams right out of it, that glorious sweet 10. Oh, sounds so good. When you get on the brakes, it is very, very aggressive there too, ducking all around, darting and moving as we flow down into Acqua Minerale here, one of the most historic circuits in Formula One. Oh, this is an amazing place to be at. An amazing car. Now, sometimes Lamborghini transmissions have been known to be a little bit harsh, but that's not the case in the Performante. It's actually very smooth. And that's an important thing as you're out here on the racetrack, because you don't want the car to be bucking and dancing every time you get on the next gear. It unsettles the car. It's actually pretty smooth, which is kind of surprising. So running the car in Corsa Mode, of course. The car is very, very taut. Suspension is stiffer than in the normal Huracan. Damper is about 10% more tight than before. Roll bar is about 15% tighter than before. And then 750% more downforce than on the base Huracan. It's made the traction control much more subtle, so I actually can't feel it cutting in as much as you would on the base car. What that means is you don't have to turn off the traction control to have a really good time and to feel like you're in control of the car. And around here, that's good because you might need that safety blanket. Now, I could spend all day lapping Imola in this car. This is, of course, a Lamborghini, and that means it has to be as good in the real world as it is on the racetrack. So, let's say we leave the circuit and head out on the road.
Leaving the track, we'll toggle from race down to sport mode using Lamborghini's ANIMA system. That stands for Adaptive Network Intelligent Management and reconfigures everything from the adaptive suspension to that dual clutch transmission. There's also a street mode if you want this car to be most comfortable, but unlike the new Aventador S, the Performante lacks the so-called Ego mode, which allows for a custom configuration, and that's a bit of a shame.
Out here on the road, the Performante doesn't feel miles different than the base Huracan, but you can definitely tell that there have been some compromises made in the name of on-track performance. The ride quality is a little bit harsher, there's a little bit more road noise too. You can hear that engine more, which isn't really much of a problem, but the biggest compromise is these seats, which are really great on the track, but out here they're bolt upright and they're not really adjustable and they're frankly really stiff. But now that I'm going at a more relaxed pace, I can appreciate everything else that this interior has to offer. Now, some people have called Lamborghini interiors to be a little bit juvenile, and they're not wrong, but as a big kid myself, I gotta say, I'm at home here with the military-inspired switchgear and the stealth fighter styling. I love all of it. The Performante is actually a really nice car to drive out here on the twisty Italian roads. The steering is light but has plenty of precision, and though the brakes have incredible amounts of bite on the track, they're actually really easy to modulate, meaning you can brush the left pedal without having to worry about eating the steering wheel all the time. Overall, the car is just really nice and easy to drive, and while I can't tell whether the active aerodynamics are helping me out here on the streets, that V10 certainly is. I confess that I was already a big fan of the original Huracan. The sound and the look, it's a car that always got my juices flowing. But if I was heading to the racetrack, it probably wouldn't be the top of my list. That all changes with the Performante. It still delivers that incredible Lamborghini experience, but brings some serious track performance to the table. Is this the fastest production car in the world? I still don't know, but what I do know is that I never want to give these keys back.